Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the new Microtech Scarab 2 Gen 3. There are some interesting changes with the Gen 3, enough to get me to buy it. And I've been carrying this knife and really enjoying it. I'm really happy to answer all these questions. For people who are curious, if I own the new Scarab 2, but just not the Gen 3, is it worth upgrading? If I don't own this knife and I'm just curious about picking one up, is it worth buying? I will definitely answer those questions for you. This knife is available right now in a bunch of different configurations. I will link it down in the description. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. Man, the Scarab 2. So I bought this one, intending to use it. And I have been. I've been carrying and using it. And it's bulky, it's big, but man, is this satisfying. I'm going to say this right now at the beginning of the video. This is, in my opinion, the most satisfying double action automatic OTF that I have ever handled. It does not have Microtech's new ZBT, or is that what they call it? The zero blade tolerance system implemented, and I have no doubt that at some point in the future, they will do that to all of their models. This does not have it, but the difference between this and the past gen Scarab 2, it was essentially the same thing minus a couple of little tiny details. I loved that knife. Love it. Still own it. Won't get rid of my Shadow Scarab 2, but this one, man, this is so good. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's right for everybody, because it is very big. I've already reviewed the Scarab 2, and this isn't enough different that it warrants like a full-on review. So I'm going to go quick through specs here. Overall length of this giant OTF, 9 inches or 9.5 if you count the glass breaker. Your blade length is about 3.9 inches. Some people will measure this as 4. And your cutting edge is about 3.7. That's what I'm going to call it. Size comparisons. How about some size comparisons? Any custom scales you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and Others. Up against the 8010 and the 80-20.5. There we go. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3? There we go. And then finally, the Benchmade Reptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. I have shown this so many times up against other OTFs, like a million times. So it is, it's not the biggest double action OTF that Microtech has ever made, but it is noticeably, not necessarily longer, but it's noticeably more robust than something like a Combat Troodon or a Hera 2 or a Dirac Delta, right? This is definitely the big boy. This is their king, super tactical American. This is the big man on the top of the hill, right? So if that's what you're after, they have, like I said, in the past, they've made longer ones, right? But this is kind of the top dog in that department, right? But anyways, how is the action on this? This has the new, I don't know what they call it. It's the new easy switch, right? And these new systems do have 2 springs. The Scarab was already my favorite of the Microtechs to deploy because the firing switch was so wide. It just made the overall experience so much better. And yeah, the Scarab 2 definitely is a little bit more powerful. It's hard for me to say what percentage. It feels somewhere between 10 and 20% more powerful than even the larger dual action OTFs that we see from Microtech. This isn't going to pierce a solid surface when it deploys, which is not what double action OTFs are meant for, but it is definitely powerful enough to deploy reliably every single time. Right when I got this, I hit it with a shot of Rem oil, and I have not had a single failure. It's awesome. But the switch is even easier to fire now. This is such a satisfying experience, and the whole idea of the firing power being the same with these newer Microtech, like between the Combat Troodon from last gen and the current gen, they kept the power the same, but they made the switch substantially easier to operate, and it kind of messes with your brain because you're like, I didn't put that much force into stretching the springs out. Like, how is the blade deploying so hard, right? This is even more crazy wizardry. This is so incredibly satisfying to deploy. A lot of people that are considering buying an OTF like this, whether you say it out loud or not, you are curious about the satisfaction of this OTF. Maybe you have experienced like a cheapy OTF, right? And you're salivating over picking up one of these super cool USA Microtech OTFs that everybody talks about all the time, right? People talk about the action and how it's so much different, and you've kind of built this idea up in your head of what it's going to feel like, what it's going to sound like in person, right? It's all of that and more. This new one, it puts a smile on my face every time I deploy it. It feels like pure quality. It is amazing. This comes from somebody who owns 2 Hawk deadlocks. I own, 3 Combat Troodons, a Hera 2, a Direct Delta. I have pretty much every production OTF on the market. I have experienced it, right? I have my preferences. This feels the best, right? Even versus the ones that have 0 blade play like the ZBT Ultratech and the Hawk Deadlock. I love how smooth the Hawk Deadlock is, but there's something about being able to fully engage with this switch and throw this huge drop point blade. It's the look, it's the feel, it's the whole package. It just feels good. It feels ready to go. It feels powerful, right? It's not just cool to look at and cool to deploy, but this is a very capable knife as well. The action is superb. I couldn't ask for more. A lot of people ask me about button play. Like, people, are bothered apparently that the button moves around a little bit. There's a spring underneath this button pushing it up and away from surfaces. That's intentional. It's not Microtech going, whoopsie, whoopsie, we have bad tolerances. No, they don't want this thing grinding against surfaces. They want it to be easy. So I get that play in some areas, like blade play on a folding knife, might bother you. But on a knife, depending on the element, you want it to breathe a little bit. That's part of what makes it easy, right? Not with every OTF. They're all a little bit different. But yeah, so if that bothers you, yeah, it does move a little bit, right? And in the open position, it also moves a little bit. It just depends on whether or not that bothers you. Personally, that doesn't bother me at all. I had never even really thought about it, but apparently it does bother some people. This also has these grooves underneath here. The idea is lint and gunk from your pocket, instead of getting on this flat surface and grinding against the button, it pushes them down into those little grooves, and it doesn't create as much as a friction issue or any friction issue at all. And it should be easier to clean out. I think that was a really, really good idea. I like that a lot. Let's do carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. Yeah, this is a thick OTF, but in a good way. Feels really good. In the pocket, length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. It's like carrying a huge lighter. Not that I would know, but that's kind of how it's shaped, right? It's a big object. I guess because it's consistent, it's convenient that way. It's not an incredibly heavy object. I'm aware that it's there. I think the cool factor, I'm trying to be honest here, the cool factor of the knife and how much I love this thing is clouding my judgment when it comes to how convenient it is to carry. And we all kind of do that when we're carrying a knife that we really, really love. We're like, yeah, this is not a problem. This is totally fine. It's incredibly compact. Realistically, it is big. You will notice it, right? Not incredibly heavy necessarily, but it's big, right? I have enjoyed it so much that it hasn't really bothered me, but I think that it might bother some people more than me, so I'm just trying to point that out there. Hardware check. I'm going to get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. For some reason today, it appears that the driver is gone. That's okay. It's the stubby driver. You guys have seen it a million times. I'll find it later. But I think all of these screws are T8, which is awesome. They've been doing that for a while instead of the tri-wing screws. If you really want to get in there, you can get in there. It's not nearly as complicated or intimidating as some people think, but just make sure that you have a place to put the parts. Make sure you remember where everything goes. Don't take it apart unless you absolutely have to. It's better to contact Microtech for warranty stuff, but that's up to you. You buy it, you do what you want with it. If you don't mind voiding the warranty, right? Which you have to be careful about. Anyways, let's go ahead and weigh it. The new, Kunwu microfiber cloth, trying to be a part of the show here. The weight on this guy, which, by the way, we are looking at aluminum. We're looking at steel for the chassis and the parts, and then we're looking at M390MK, which we will talk about. Some news, some updates on the heat treat there. 5.7 ounces. It's heavy. See, this is the part where I was like, I'm kidding myself, right? I've been telling myself, like, nah, it's totally, it's a compact, lightweight XLOTF. It's not a problem. 5.7 ounces is getting up there. It's not gargantuan, but when you're approaching 6 ounces, you're getting heavy, Balance is definitely going to be butt heavy because of the size of the frame and the chassis. The blade isn't nearly as big, but they did do a good job of putting a burly blade on this thing, right? Blade stock thickness. I bet this is about 125 thousandths. Let's take a look here and find out. Bet it is. Ooh, no, that's that's way bigger. I had no idea this blade was so thick. Man, it doesn't look that thick compared to the frame. That sucker is 157. That is crazy. That's a thick blade. All right. Okay, meat and potatoes time. I love what they did with the body here. This back line back here and the lines up front, they changed this subtly and it looks so good. I like I didn't used to like the little Track Tech inlays, but man, they feel good. The whole knife looks and feels so tactical and so purpose-built. So cool. Such an awesome look. Every part of this knife, awesome, but the backside with this one line all the way through. I'm kind of wishing that they had done that here. Just one line through the middle, but no big deal. It also acts as a smooth spot for the pocket clip to ride on, which, by the way, is a pocket clip that can be flipped around for left-handed carry. So that's really, really cool. This comes in Tanto, I'm sure, well, at some point, if it doesn't now, Tanto and dual edge and all that, partially serrated, fully serrated, whatever you want. A bunch of different finishes, including stonewashed and probably DLC. They'll probably charge us more for the Shadow Edition, right? Hopefully they bring bronze back. I don't know why they haven't been doing that. You can get apocalyptic, whatever. There's a bunch of different colors, right? It's typical Microtech. The ergonomics of this, it feels like you're holding this big, thick rectangle, but heavy chamfering on the edges. Very comfortable, very locked in. Doesn't really feel, unless you choke way up here and you're squeezing on the edges of that button, no part of this knife really feels uncomfortable. Even the pocket clip, which has a bit of a bill on it. Not really. It's just, man, it's so fun to fire. It's so, so cool. So you have these lines here, and I guess the idea is it makes it to where this blade can be deployed underwater. So if you do that, that'll make it easier. I don't do that, so whatever. M390MK. So a while back, actually, since it's come out, I think initially, the initial heat treat reports was that it was, a lot of people were hearing that it was soft. Now, whether or not it's the appropriate range is somewhat subjective, depending on who you ask. A lot of people will make arguments, well, it is better toughness. And certain compositions benefit greatly from hitting a specific range, and going under that range, you lose the idea of the benefit of that specific composition. So it's not that any range is bad, it's that certain ranges are bad for certain steels depending on the idea behind the composition's purpose in the first place, which is, for some reason, a very difficult concept for some people to grasp. But that's 101 surface level stuff. You don't have to be a metallurgist to understand that, right? Obviously, there's other things that go into it, including the environment and how you're going to use it and the geometry of the blade, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. M390MK, in my opinion, should not, just like M390 or 20CV or 204P, should not, given typical knife geometry, which I would say this still falls into, should not dip below 60. That's my opinion. I like to see it at 60 to 62. M390MK is essentially the same thing as M390. It's just got a bit of a top hat, something that makes it a little bit easier to machine, I guess, or grind, right? Early reports were that this stuff was coming in like 57, 58, 59, not super great. Current reports, and I take this with a little grain of salt. I want to see more consistent reports on this. It seems like Microtech may have secretly bumped this up. So a lot more of these have apparently been being tested in the mid-60s, which, if true, is much better. I don't necessarily use any of my knives hard enough or consistently enough to be able to tell the difference between, even though I have my preferences, to be able to tell the difference between, like, for example, an M390 blade that's heat treated to 59 to one that's heat treated to 60. I'm not that sensitive to it. I can definitely tell when something like an M390 blade is heat treated at 57 because it dulls very quickly. This didn't. This is still going, but then again, this has just been carried and used like I'm a design reviewer, right? I don't do the testing or anything, so I just whip this thing out and use it like a pocket knife when I need it. So far, it hasn't acted like it's got a poor heat treat. It's been cutting, it's been slicing. The edge is still definitely sharp. So I think I've got one from a batch that was heat treated. I would like to assume properly if that is the case. Again, though, I'd like to see consistent reports of higher HRC for Microtech knives across the board utilizing M390 MK, which was made specifically for Microtech by Bowler. I'd like to see it consistently over 60 over a long period of time before I assume that that's actually part of their new protocol heat treat process. I just wanted to forward the information that I've heard. Fit and finish, as per usual, is top notch. Microtech doing a very good job with fit and finish all the way around. This knife, everything looks good. Everything looks straight. Everything looks awesome. The only thing that I don't like about this knife, you guessed it, is this. Why, Microtech, why must you put this huge billboard? God dang it, it looks like a back of a milk carton. All the nutritional information is ridiculous. I don't want to read a book. I don't want to read this, the whole, God, it is just so much. It kills the aesthetic of the blade. I hate it. Look how good this looks on this side. Ah, boo. Oh, bleh. Why? They figured out that they can charge us Microtech Shadow Edition for an additional $175 to $200 and no billboarding. Ugh. Why can't you just make this smaller? Or you know what? Just the claw. Just small. Like just the Microtech claw up there. Or for the Scarabs, since you already have the Scarab logo back here, just don't put anything on there. Just don't. It bothers me, but you know what? I've gotten to the point where I'm like, it's there. What are you gonna do, right? So, I like the knife too much for the billboarding to be a deal breaker, honestly. The seam meets up, everything's great. Closed position rattle, minimal but clunky for some reason. Open position rattle, yeah, but the blade play, pretty minimal. About the most minimal blade play you can expect from a Microtech OTF. I don't know why. It seems like the Scarab just has less blade play. This knife, despite this being the biggest and most powerful of the Microtech double action current production OTFs, this fatigues my hand less than not only all of my other Microtechs, but I feel like it fatigues my hand less than any of my other OTFs, period. It is that comfortable. I mean, this is like riding in a luxury semi-truck. Like, it is big, powerful, and cozy. It's that actually worked. I didn't know where I was going with that. It came out too quick. But yeah, it's really nice. There's a glass breaker. I don't like these glass breakers. There's a company out there that just makes a replacement butt screw for this if you want to take this off, you know. There's always that one guy, better safe than sorry, you know. You'll be really kicking yourself if you drive off a bridge and into a lake and you're sitting in your car like, gosh darn it, shouldn't have taken the glass breaker off my. I'm guess I'm gonna die now, you know. I'm joking about that, but I guess so. You know, I don't plan on driving into a lake, but who does? Who does? Nobody plans on submerging. Most people don't plan on submerging their vehicles, right? So if you have a glass breaker, it'll work. I believe that it will work. Pocket clip. Don't love the bill. It's definitely going to snag on something and bend out at some point. Fortunately, I think Microtech's got a pretty good warranty. They'll probably take care of you. In and out of the pocket, honestly, no issue at all because that big smooth surface there. Like I said, incredibly reliable. I've had no bounce back like I did with the Hera 2. I've had no failures, but I did hit it with a shot of Rem oil right off the bat. If you're having issues with yours, clean it out and hit it with a shot of Rem oil on both sides and cycle it, I would say about 20 times, and then wipe the blade off. Specifically, Rem oil, not WD-40, not whatever you have lying around, not Pam from your Lazy Susan. Rem oil, specifically, I believe is what Microtech still to this day uses at the factory. It's a dry lubricant. It leaves little flakes of Teflon behind, which is very, very good for your OTF knife. So please use Rem Oil. Maybe I'll link it down in the description on Amazon or on DL. I think DLT Trading has some. This knife, what does this knife cost? This is a $500 OTF. Now, Microtech OTF Scarabs have always been pretty expensive. I don't remember. I think at one point they were like $400, but it was also like this new version of the Scarab, right? The Scarab 2 is much larger. This is a USA-made knife. I mean, Microtech's making like 95%, 98% of their parts in-house. This is an expensive thing to create. Do I feel like it's competitive at $500? It is kind of, it does have this unique aura. The Scarab is different. It has a different presence, a different energy. It commands a different level of respect within the knife community. And for good reason, it feels different. Nobody has ever really managed to make a competitive Scarab. Lots of companies, or a direct competitor to the Scarab. I know you guys want to tell me like, oh, the Heretic Colossus or whatever. Yeah, but not really, though. I mean, if you've handled both, then no, not really. The Colossus is cool, but is it the Scarab? It's not. Anybody who's handled both will be able to tell you that. And I have. I don't have a review on it, but I've handled it. This knife does feel different. So it has that, and you know, you're going to pay a little more for Microtechs, right? I think I'd be a lot happier if like all Microtech knives were like $50 less. It just would make a lot more sense. But you know what? It would be nice if everything on planet Earth would cost $50 less, you know? So in some ways, it does feel like a fair price tag, but I think it's me loving this. This knife isn't for everybody. It's too big and it's too bulky, and it's also illegal in a lot of places, right? If you are hunting the quintessential, like the ultimate double action production American OTF, it's this, specifically the Gen 3. The Gen 3 is awesome, and the changes are very, very cool. Do I feel like $500 is a fair price? I think it's a bit high, but once you've got it, oh boy. Any feeling of like having to overpay for it really goes out the window quick, right? I love this knife. This is easily one of my favorite knives. It will go on my favorite knives of all time playlist. I am hesitant to recommend this knife because it definitely is not for everybody, and the price is very, very high. So let me say this. I recommend this to you if you are seeking out exactly what you know this to be. If you're just looking for that last push, yeah. If you know what you want, you're just waiting to hear me say that it's awesome. It's awesome. A regular Joe looking for a good utilitarian knife, you can have that for $30 nowadays, right? This is something specific. So I recommend it to those people looking for that. But if you're like, I don't need an OTF and it seems kind of big. Oh yeah, it's not for you, right? You'd be paying all this money for, you know, a bunch of elements you don't want. Man, super cool. OTF people, you gotta have one of these in your collection. If you're a big OTF person, big on USA stuff, you have to. This is super cool. It's very expensive, but man, is it satisfying. Definitely going on my favorite knives of all time playlist. That's it. Thanks so much for watching. Links in the description for this guy, and I'll try to remember to put Rem Oil down there. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.